What is going on, everybody? How are you doing today? It is a beautiful, beautiful day. While it is still a beautiful day, it is still a sad day because, as you can see in the thumbnail, you have the passing of Hydeia Broadbent. For those of y'all who do not know who Hydeia Broadbent is, Hydeia Broadbent was the one of the poster children of HIV and AIDS. Along with Ryan White, there was Hydeia Broadbent. And Hydeia was a special case because Hydeia was different from Ryan. Ryan actually contracted HIV, whereas Hydeia was born with it. Hydeia was born with HIV, and they basically told her parents, you got a 5-year window. For those of y'all who are not aware, HIV was a 5-year death sentence. It was such a 5-year death sentence that a lot of people, began to, formulate wills and all of that stuff for their families the minute they found out they contracted the virus. Okay? And the worst part is that debilitating visualization of someone withering away and dying in front of your eyes. Now, without getting too graphic, if you guys have watched things like Philadelphia, you actually saw Tom Hanks actually physically deteriorate for that role, which earned him an Oscar. Also, if you watch Jared Leto in Dallas Buyers Club, also you watch Matthew McConaughey in Dallas Buyers Club, you will see how HIV and AIDS progressed and therefore killed you. If you want a visualization of what that looks like. Unfortunately, I don't want to revisit that because I have watched people that I've cared about pass away from that disease, which is part of the reason why I joined the HIV/AIDS peer education group in New York City when I was 14, 15 years old. At that time, Hydeia Broadbent was 7. And I remember seeing her for the first time talking about her struggles, not knowing what's going on, people not wanting to connect with her physically, not even from a, obviously not from a sexual standpoint, but from a physical standpoint. People don't want to hug her, people don't want to care for her, people don't want to hold her hand. And she was the poster child for the stigma of HIV, knowing at that time people used to stigmatize HIV as a quote unquote gay disease. And while it was prevalent in the gay community initially, it did spread to the general population. And when it did, it changed the nature of how people sought to treat it, because it then began to manifest itself in a way where people no longer could, quote unquote, justify their ineptitude or their laissez-faire attitude about it because of how you contract it. So she was featured with Magic Johnson, and in that video she cried, and Magic Johnson hugged her, who at that time he himself had been 1 year in contracting the HIV virus. And the craziest part of it all is both Magic Johnson and Hydeia Broadbent lived beyond the 5-year prognosis or the 5-year diagnosis of their disease. Magic Johnson is obviously still living, and much respect to him being the stand-up person he was to come out and face the music about who he had become now that he has contracted this HIV virus. Obviously, I'm not suggesting that anything improper, but what I'm saying is that Magic Johnson stepped out into the light instead of retreating to the shadows. He stepped out into the light and let you understand that humans are who get HIV and AIDS, not a certain group of people or a certain type of people. If I don't do this, I'll be remiss to do this. But shout out to Mr. Tom Porton, who not only helped coordinate the HIV/AIDS peer education program, but also he himself has been a massive foundation in my life. He is one of the most elite teachers to ever walk the planet. Brilliant, beyond all recognition. And if not for him, my exposure to Hydeia would not have been as pronounced as it was. And it would not have been etched in my brain the image of a young girl being a victim of HIV and AIDS. And when I say that, again, she was born with it. And while there is no cure, we have found numerous ways to keep it at bay. Now, with Hydeia, I want to say that we don't know how she passed away. We just know that she did. We don't know from what, and we don't want to make any assumptions as to what, because ironically, it would be disrespectful to assume she died of the disease that she was born with. We don't know what caused her to pass. But a celebration of her life is what we're doing right now, because without her, who knows where we would all be at this point in regards to how we view the disease. Obviously, nobody wants to contract it. But within that, for this young woman to have lived for 39 years, 34 years beyond her prognosis is the gift in of itself. For those of y'all who are watching right now, go ahead and put a 1 in the chat for me, so that way you guys can let me know that you guys feel the same way that I feel about the life of this young woman. If you do not catch this live, go ahead and put a 1 in the comment section for me as well. Guys, this is the disease that changed my life. And when I say that, I'm not HIV positive and I do not have AIDS, but it did in fact change my life, because it was only then that I started beginning to have a stronger interest in health, a stronger interest in how things work in the human body, and how is it that the body can do what it does, and how can diseases ravage it and destroy it. If not for HIV and AIDS, I would not be the personal trainer that I am right now. If not for HIV and AIDS, I would not be the advocate for sexual education that I am right now. If not for HIV and AIDS, if not for Hydeia, I would not be the person that is not afraid to come onto these airwaves and discuss in great detail HIV and AIDS. I definitely want you guys to strongly consider how you sit down with your children and discuss this topic, because even for me to discuss this with my children, it wasn't easy, and I'm very well versed in it, and I'm very comfortable talking about this subject matter. And even then, the awkwardness that I felt discussing it was still there, right? one of the things that you have to understand is this sexual education is highly important right now, because when you look at what's going on right now with this hookup culture that we're in right now, your children are highly likely to contract HIV and AIDS amongst young people. So let's get with that. I want to see something real quick, because sometimes these numbers tend to change. So here, HIV prevalence amongst young people 15 to 24 years is 0.03%, right? So that would mean according to UNICEF, in 2022 alone, 480,000 young people between the ages of 10 to 24 were newly infected with HIV. Okay? I'm looking down here if you're wondering. I'm right here. Okay? Which means more than, according to the CDC, more than half of the new HIV diagnoses were among young people aged 13 to 34 in 2021. Okay? So, why am I bringing this up? Because this is, even though this has nothing to do with Hydeia Broadbent, it has everything to do with what the message about HIV and AIDS is about. It is to spread awareness about the disease, to make you aware of how the disease is contracted, how the disease is treated, and how you can actively avoid it. And if you do not have these conversations with your children, what's going to happen is you're setting yourself up for fear, concern, worry, and you're setting your children up, your young children, up for a lifetime of medical interventions. While Hydeia was proud to be someone walking around this earth with HIV, because she was born with it, this is through no fault of her own. She wanted you to be aware of how you contract it, so that you yourself can actively avoid it. And if I do not continue that, I would be doing her a disservice as well. And I personally believe that we have a responsibility to our children to talk to them about the birds and the bees. I have news for you, for those of y'all who think that your child is too young because they happen to be in 4th or 5th grade. I got bad news for you. They talk. They speak with... Now, obviously, in my mind, observing these children and observing them talk while as a teacher, they are not fully educated on the subject matter as to how you go about doing it, where and when and how and all that stuff. But as they get older, especially when they creep into middle school, somebody amongst them knows what they're doing. Somebody amongst them knows what they're talking about, to the extent that they could get the act done. How they conduct themselves as responsible people is a whole nother story. And it is important that I make it incumbent upon you that when the moment your children begin to show signs of development, whether it's a voice change, whether it's a size change, whether it's in a deeper interest in their physique or their looks or exposing parts of their bodies, you need to have these talks with them. Because I assure you, if you do not have these conversations, what's going to end up happening is that you're going to find yourself on the wrong end of these situations. Give me 1 second. Hold on. Okay, I am back. Terribly sorry. But one of the things that we need to start discussing with your children is about relationships. Because far too many of them are just interested in the act itself, not even necessarily the connection between themselves and another person. Simply just the act itself, they are just desperate to do it. And as a result, it brings about a level of confusion and misinformation as to what this whole activity is about. I try to instruct kids, especially when they are quite interested in doing the act. I instruct them to go talk to their parents. And if I happen to be able to talk to their parents, especially if I make observations about their behavior, I let their parents know, hey, you might want to talk to your son, daughter about the birds and the bees, because based on what I'm seeing, they're showing interest in girls or boys, depending on what their flavor is. It doesn't matter. I instruct them to have that conversation so that way that these parents are not finding themselves behind the 8 ball, trying to either catch up or trying to mitigate the damage that can be done with irresponsible sexual activity. So, as a result, what I want people to do is, in fact, this. I'm going to actually play this video. Give me 1 second. Okay. So, you heard it from her yourself. She wants she wanted a cure. She functionally wanted a cure. And also she doesn't want other people to have this disease. While like I told you before, her life was in fact beautiful. I don't think anybody wants to wake up with an affliction or be born with an affliction. They want to be as healthy as humanly possible within the confines of what is considered to be normal, whatever that is. This is part of the reason why I do what I do here. It's, yes, this is a fitness channel, but this is about health and education as well. And health and education go hand in hand with fitness, because without health, you can't be fit. Without fitness, you can't be healthy. If you are not behaving in certain ways to allow yourself to avoid the pitfalls and the dangers that can arise with sexual activity, you can find yourself on the wrong end of the stick, which means your health is now compromised, which means your fitness is now compromised, which means your life is now compromised. And that means that everything that we're doing here is affected, so to speak. And what I want everybody to know and understand is, at the end of the day, we owe each other that responsibility. Being honest and upfront about our sexuality, being upfront and honest about our sexual activity, being upfront and honest about how we plan to go forward from here. It is not everybody's business about your sex, your sexual activity, your sexual orientation. It's not everybody's business. So you don't have to announce it all to the world. But if you find yourself attracted to anyone, your job, your responsibility is to not only let them know where you stand in your sexuality and where you stand in your sexual activity and behavior, but you also owe them the responsibility to know that you have a sexually transmitted disease. Sometimes, yeah, I understand it is embarrassing. I understand that it can affect how people perceive you. But if people really are genuinely caring about you as a human being, what we can do is definitely hear people out and have a level of understanding and compassion, because I'm sure this young lady, whenever she got in, if she happened to be in a relationship, I don't know, but if she managed to be in a relationship, she has to disclose that she's HIV positive. And while some people might have rejected that, I am certain that somebody cared enough about her to know, like, and love her. And as a result, they they took it upon themselves to not judge her simply because she was afflicted with this disease. And I'm sure somebody is not going to judge you if you happen to be afflicted with this disease as well, outside of any moral deviancy in the contraction. And I'm not talking about gay, lesbian, straight, LGBTQ stuff. I'm talking about just a high level of promiscuity, if you will. Okay? Promiscuity just exponentializes your chances of contracting a sexually transmitted disease, and that's smoke that you do not want. I'm not judging, I'm just letting you know it is what it is. Teach your children that it's okay to be abstinent until they are ready. Teach your children to use contraception when they do become sexually active. Let them know what is appropriate, what is acceptable, what is okay, so that way nobody can convince them into doing things that they may or may not want to do or may not feel is okay or safe to do. Make sure that they are clearly in the know of what you need them to know, so that way that they can make these choices of sound mind and body. So I'm going to land this plane, and hopefully you guys begin to understand what this is about. So do me a favor, put a like in the chat. Put a like in the comment section. Give me a comments or concerns of whatever it is that you feel the need to express to. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and on YouTube. Have a nice day. Be the best you. Class of Stoutt.